the story starts.
The Korean Mafia boss left me in labor for his mistress. He didn't know she was destroying his empire. The contraction hit at 3:14 in the morning and I called him 4 times before I stopped counting. He didn't answer. I drove myself to the hospital. I checked myself in. I gave my name and my insurance card and the nurse asked if anyone was coming and I said yes because I still believed it then. I still believed a lot of things at 3:14 in the morning. By 7 a.m., I had been in labor for nearly 4 hours. The window was pale grey. The machines beeped in a rhythm that felt almost peaceful. And the chair beside my bed was still empty. His name is Ryu Seok-jin, and the reason he didn't answer is because he was with her. I knew her name. I had known it for 3 months. Vivian. She was at his dinners, his meetings, his car at 2 a.m. parked outside buildings I wasn't supposed to know about. Beautiful, composed, strategic in the way that only certain women are strategic. Like every room she walked into had already been studied before she entered. I told myself it wasn't what I thought. I was wrong. Seok-jin arrived at the hospital at 9:52. I know because I watch the clock the way you do when you've been alone long enough that time becomes the only honest thing in the room. He walked in wearing the same grey jacket he'd left the house in the night before. He hadn't gone home. He didn't apologise. He looked at me in that way he had. Cold, measured, like he was assessing a situation rather than seeing his wife in a hospital bed. He asked if everything was fine. Not fine like he cared. Fine like he needed the information for logistics. You didn't come, I said. I'm here now. Seok-jin, I've been here since 3 in the morning. I had something I couldn't leave. I didn't ask what. I already knew what. What I didn't know was what none of us knew, was exactly who Vivian was. That part came later. He stayed for 40 minutes. I know because I counted those 2. He took a phone call in the hallway. He came back with his jacket buttoned and his expression already somewhere else. He said the lawyers needed him. He said he'd come back tonight. He said it the way people say things they have no intention of doing. Please, I said, and I hated myself for saying it. Please stay. Our son is about to be born. He looked at me for a long moment. You'll be fine, he said, and he left. Our son, Kai, was born at 11:23 a.m. He was 6 pounds, 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and his father's jawline and my stubborn eyes. The nurses were kind. One of them held my hand during the final push and didn't say a word because she understood there was nothing to say. I held him and I cried. Not the way I'd imagined, not with joy overflowing. I cried the way you cry when something beautiful happens inside something broken. When you love someone so completely that the love itself becomes painful because the person who was supposed to share it is in a car with another woman 2 miles away. That was the worst moment of my life. Or so I thought. Seok-jin came back the next morning with a lawyer. Not to apologise. Not to hold his son. He came with a man in a charcoal suit who set a folder on the rolling hospital table beside my bed and stepped back quietly. What is this? I asked. We need to discuss the terms, Seok-jin said. I looked at the folder. I looked at him. I looked at my son sleeping in the clear bassinet beside me, less than 20 hours old. You're doing this now. I think it's cleaner this way. Cleaner. He used that word, like our marriage was a surface he needed to wipe down. Seok-jin, I just gave birth yesterday. I know, I think it's better to handle these things before emotions make them more complicated. I stared at him and I thought, who are you? Because the man I married, or the man I believed I was marrying, would never have stood in a hospital room the morning after his son's birth and said the word cleaner. He would never have brought a lawyer. He would never have looked at his child sleeping 6 feet away and chosen a folder over a first hello. But people show you who they are when they believe you have no options. He believed I had no options. He was so wrong about that. I didn't reach for the folder. I looked at him and I said quietly, You should have asked who my father was before you walked in here. He frowned. What? Call your lawyer back in. We'll all need to hear this together. He thought I was bluffing. I watched him decide it. I watched him decide I was a woman running on no sleep and postpartum emotion who had said something dramatic to make herself feel better. He almost smiled. Amara? My maiden name is Okafor, I said. My father is Emeka Okafor. You've done business in 4 of his ports without knowing they were his. Your shipping contracts in Savannah, Baltimore, and Long Beach, his infrastructure, his partnerships, his silent signatures on every logistics agreement your family has run through this country for the last 6 years. The almost smile disappeared. That's not... Call your lawyer back in, I said again. Please. He didn't move for a long moment. I watched something shift behind his eyes. The calculation he was always doing, the constant measuring of threats and variables, suddenly had a new number in it, and it wasn't adding up the way he needed. He stepped into the hallway. I picked up my phone and sent one message. 3 words. He's ready now. While he was in the hallway, his phone started vibrating. I could hear it through the wall. Short bursts at first, then faster, then non-stop. The kind of rhythm that means multiple calls from multiple people who all need the same answer at the same time. He came back into the room with his jaw tight and his phone in his hand. Business? I asked. He didn't answer. He was looking at the screen with an expression I had never seen on him before. Not anger, not calculation. Confusion. The kind that comes when a man who has always held the controls suddenly finds the controls are responding to someone else. His lawyer's phone began buzzing too. The man in the charcoal suit glanced at his screen, then quietly moved toward the corner of the room and turned his back to take the call. I watched his posture change as he listened, shoulders dropping, head tilting slightly, the body language of a man receiving information he did not want. Something was already happening. Seok-jin just didn't understand what yet. 40 minutes later, 2 men in suits arrived at my hospital room door. They introduced themselves as representatives of Okafor Holdings. They had folders of their own, thicker ones, with more signatures and more dates and more documentation of a relationship between the Kwon organization and my father's infrastructure that Seok-jin had spent 6 years not knowing existed. He went very still when he saw the folders. That stillness, that specific total stillness, was the first time I understood what it meant to hold power. Not loud power, not angry power, the kind that arrives quietly and rearranges the room without raising its voice. Your father has known about Vivian for 4 months, I said, and about your operations' dependence on his infrastructure for 3 years. He allowed the relationship to continue because of me, because I asked him to. Seok-jin looked at me like he was seeing a stranger. You asked him to. I loved you, I said simply. I protected you because I loved you, and you spent that same time choosing a woman who... His phone lit up again. He looked at the screen. His face went grey. What is it? His lawyer asked, moving toward him. Seok-jin didn't answer. He turned the phone slowly toward the lawyer, who read it and went immediately silent. What happened? I asked. The Savannah account, Seok-jin said. His voice was flat, disconnected, like the words were coming from somewhere outside him. Frozen, his lawyer said quietly. Not seized, not under review. Frozen, meaning someone with the authority to move faster than any private legal team had already been watching and already been building, and was now, in real time, pulling threads. Seok-jin looked at me. I held his gaze. Still think I had no one, I said. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The charcoal suit lawyer closed his folder, picked up his briefcase and said, I need to make a call. He walked out of the room. He did not come back. My phone rang before I could finish what I was going to say next. It was a number I recognized, someone I had spoken to twice in the last 4 months. Someone my father had connected me with when things started feeling wrong. When Vivian's presence stopped feeling like a mistress and started feeling like something more structured, more purposeful. I answered it on speaker. The voice was professional, measured, female. Ms. Okafor, the operation concluded this morning. I thought you'd want to know. Seok-jin's head turned toward the phone. What operation? he said. I looked at him. Her name isn't Vivian, I said. Her name is Cassandra Webb. She's a special agent with the FBI Financial Crimes Division. She has been embedded in your organization for 9 months. The color left his face in a way I had never seen before. Not slowly, all at once. 9 months, I continued. The same 9 months I was pregnant with your son. She arrived 2 weeks after I told you we were expecting. She left, I'm assuming, sometime this morning. His lawyer was already on his phone. His hand was not steady. The financial trafficking charges, the money laundering through the Savannah Port Logistics, the 3 shell companies registered in your cousin's name, the wire transfers to Hong Kong, she documented all of it, I said. Every meeting, every handshake, every envelope, 9 months of evidence. Seok-jin's head snapped toward the door. 2 of his own guards were posted outside. He had brought them. Standard practice. He never went anywhere important without them. He said a name. Sharp. Commanding. The tone he used when he expected instant obedience. Neither guard moved. He said the name again. One of them turned his head slowly and said, "We've been asked to remain neutral, sir." I watched Seok-jin's expression go through several things at once. Disbelief. Recognition. Then something that looked, for the first time in the years I had known him, like genuine fear. His own security had been briefed before he arrived. "You knew they'd refuse," he said to me. "My father's team spoke with them this morning," I said, "before you came. He planned this entire—" "No," I said. "You planned this. You planned the lawyer, the folder, the timing. My father just planned for you." He stood in the center of the room with his accounts freezing, his lawyer gone, his guards no longer responding to his voice, and the woman he had dismissed holding their son in a hospital bed. "You knew," he said finally. His voice had lost everything it usually carried. "You knew the whole time." "I suspected," I said. "I told my father. My father made calls. When the FBI confirmed what she was, I was given a choice." "What choice?" "Whether to warn you or to step back and let it happen." He stared at me. "I almost warned you," I said. 3 months ago, I almost told you everything. I had the conversation ready. I had decided that whatever you had done, whatever was happening with her, you were still my husband and the father of my child, and you deserved to know." "Then why?" "Because that same week," I said slowly, "you came home at midnight smelling like her perfume, and I asked you where you'd been, and you looked at me. You looked directly at me, and you said, 'Nowhere you need to know about.'" The room was completely quiet except for the soft sound of Kai breathing in his bassinet. "You made your choice," I said, "and I made mine." What happened next happened fast, the way these things always do once the machinery is already in motion. More calls, more freezes. His cousin contacted before the afternoon. The Hong Kong transfers flagged. The shell companies under examination. And Seok-jin, standing in a hospital room that was supposed to be where he quietly ended our marriage, slowly understanding that every assumption he had walked in with was wrong. He reached for my hand at some point. I don't know exactly when. I had stopped tracking the time. I moved my hand before he could touch it. "Amara, don't. I didn't know who you were." "You knew exactly who I was," I said. "You knew I was your wife. You knew I was pregnant. You knew I had been loyal to you in ways you will only understand now that it's too late. That should have been enough." He looked at Kai. Something broke in his face then. Real breaking, not the calculation shifting, not the variables reorganizing, something behind his eyes that had been held closed for a very long time. "Can I—" he started. "No," I said. "Not today. He's my son. Then act like it. Starting from today. Under whatever terms my father's lawyers set. In whatever framework a judge approves. Supervised. Documented. Earned." He stood there for a moment more. I watched him try to find the version of himself that commanded rooms and made men quiet and handled situations. I watched him look for that man and find nothing there. "I'm sorry," he said finally. I looked at him for a long time. "I know," I said, "but you're not sorry because you hurt me. You're sorry because the house is on fire, and you just realized you're standing inside it. He left. My father arrived 2 hours later. Amara Okafor walked into that hospital room, and he didn't say I told you so, even though he had told me. He had told me in the way fathers tell daughters things. Carefully, quietly, leaving the choice in her hands. He sat beside my bed and he held my hand, and he looked at his grandson for a long time without speaking. Then he said, "What do you need?" I thought about it. "I need a house," I said. "Something quiet, with a yard. Done. And I need for Kai to grow up knowing that his mother chose herself when it mattered. Not revenge, not anger, just herself." He squeezed my hand. "He'll know," he said. Cassandra Webb, Agent Webb, sent me a handwritten note 8 weeks later. It was professional and brief. She said she understood if I hated her. She said she had done what she was sent to do and that she was sorry for the collateral damage. She said his operation had moved more dirty money than anyone outside the agency had understood, and that the case had been necessary. I don't hate her. I almost thanked her. Because here is what I know now that I didn't know the morning I drove myself to the hospital at 3 a.m. The woman I was then, the one who waited, who believed, who counted the minutes in a hospital chair, she was not weak. She was just loving the wrong person with the right kind of heart. And the woman I am now, she doesn't wait. She doesn't beg. She doesn't drive herself to the hospital alone and convince herself he's on his way. She picks up the phone and calls the people who actually show up. Kai is 4 months old now. He has his father's jawline and his grandfather's laugh, and my stubborn eyes. He does not know what happened the morning he was born. He does not know that the room he came into was already in the process of changing. He just knows warmth and milk and the sound of his mother's voice. That is enough for now. And for me, for the first time in 3 years, enough is actually enough. If you've ever loved someone who only respected you after they lost you, subscribe right now. And drop your city in the comments below. I want to know where the strong women are listening from tonight. Because this channel exists for every woman who stayed too long, loved too hard, and still walked out with her dignity. She was never the one who needed saving. She was always the one they should have feared losing.